The first point I want to make is this. If you look at this poster, modernity slash religion, what is it? It is a concept. Okay? Secularism is also a concept. Then we have to ask this question, how is concept formed? I want to submit to you that secularism is a combat concept. So this is an idea developed by Reinhard Koselleck. The Western power ruled the world by creating combat concept. Progress is a combat concept. Okay? The missionary division of the world into heathen and the believers, and by believers they mean the Christians. So, or heathen versus civilized. It is not a neutral concept, it is a combat concept. I want to submit to you that secularism is basically a combat concept. Okay? Now, but this needs to be further unpacked. In the history of the Mughal Empire and the Ottoman Empire, of course you have, I don't like the term multi-ethnic, but you do have multi-community political formation. Okay? So if the question is how people of different faiths and tradition can live together under one political community, okay, that is not secularism. This has been part of the Mughal Empire. This has been part of the experience of the Ottoman Empire, but they didn't call it secular. The moment you use the word secular, you are basically playing a role of native informant. I reject that idea completely that Bangladeshi secularism is unique. I mean, Indians have been saying the same thing. Wow, we are exceptional. It doesn't mean this. Actually, it is part of the nationalist narrative. When you are educated in India, you say that India is a unique nation in the sense that the unity and diversity is unique to India. You go to Indonesia, I mean in Papua New Guinea, there are 500 languages. So what kind of diversity you are talking about? You know, Indonesia. So this actually the idea of uniqueness is part of nationalist historiography. There is no nation which says that we are like any other nation. There is always a distinctiveness. Now from here, I want you to take you to a theoretical debate. So it is a combat concept, especially today, because it is a weapon which is used to discipline different section of people, telling that, look, you have to fit here and there, okay? But if the question is of how people from different faiths and traditions and communities can live together, then we have to rely on our own indigenous traditions. And I gave you the example of Mughal Empire and the Ottoman Empire. It was very multi-ethnic, which the term that I don't want to use. So I would use multi-community oriented. Okay? Now the second thing is, I don't think we can have political freedom as long as we have intellectual freedom. So what I mean here, if you look at this term called modernity or religion, okay, so as you know by now that there is something called combat term, okay, heathen, civilized, progress, these are all combat terms. The other thing is, concepts are also, philosophers make a difference between two kinds of concept. One is experience near and experience distant. So when I say, for example, culture, Ministry of Tourism people, they will also know what is culture. But the meaning of that term is not exactly in the same way as sociologists or anthropologists might use it. Okay? There are also concepts which are observational concepts. And there are concepts which are not observable. So for example, if I make a thesis here, an argument about a concept like intimacy, okay? And I propose that people kissing each other are intimate. So here, kissing is an observational concept. You can observe it, okay? And then the theoretical concept is intimacy. But there are concepts which are not empirically observable. Like for example, Deleuze and Guattari, they talk about rhizome. It is very hard to empirically observe it, okay? Now, my final point is that you cannot have political freedom as long as you use the concept supplied by an oppressive regime and you use it by working as what it would say, native informants. So you take the concept of secularism from outside and then you say, Indians are saying this, Bangladeshi can also do it, other people can also do it. No, we use, but we are supplying resources to you that we also have secularism. No, we don't have secularism, right? And why there is a need to be apologetic, if you mean how to deal with religious diversity, live together peacefully, there is a concept, okay? And therefore, I do not like this thing to be translated. So, none of these languages actually have that term, right? So you do the act of translation. Now, translation is a very complicated business. Why I would allow myself, and this is the final point I want to make, because there is concepts of also of two kinds. One is emic and the etic. Emic is the way I look at myself, and etic is the term others use to describe me. So for example, those of you who have lived in Europe or elsewhere, I had some experience that I would be described as black, okay? But in the eyes of my late mother, I was not black. She probably thought that I'm the most, handsome boy. So why if somebody calls me black, okay, it is an act of intellectual slavery that I allow myself to be defined by the terms from others. So in my writings, I don't translate Sharia as a holy law, which is the standard translation. Because by translating it as a holy law, you do violence. You follow, because the idea of holiness, the way it exists in Christianity, that is entirely foreign to Islamic tradition. There is no Trinity and holiness. So any act of translation, when you translate Sharia as holy law, is already an act of violence. Now, to conclude, what I would suggest to you is that rather than export this concept from elsewhere and then supply or use our history and archive to say that, look, we also have it something. It is called Dharma Nirpeksha and all that, but that is also what Indians say. And this claim for uniqueness and so on. So I would suggest that both this modernity, in any case, modernity is a Christian term. It was used for the first time to mark the passage from pagan times and inauguration of Christian era. Okay? My grandfather or grandmother, they never used this term called modernity. So it is not close to their experience, by the way. And modernity itself, 50 years ago, nobody was using this term. So it is also, the question to ask is that for my, 100 years ago, people in Bangladesh, under British colonialism, they were not experiencing modernity. It is a term given by colonizing academic vocabulary. If you talk to the people in Bangladesh, they would be talking about colonization, they would be talking about domination, they would be talking about inequality, not modernity. So why we are using this term, religion? I don't think Islam is a religion. I mean, you have a Latin term, religion, and then you impose on it. This is not how Muslims themselves have described. And therefore, the Islamic idea of religion is deen. Okay? As I would not translate Sharia into holy law, because that is already an act of violence, I will not, if you think, because this, I wrote an essay which is called, where I describe that how modernity is an oppressive category. it is also based on, and this is something most historians who are often uncritical, they have a notion of time which is divided into past, present, and future. Okay? That is not the Islamic idea of time, by the way. Because you cannot think about modernity without this tripartite division of past, present, and future. The Quranic idea of time is very different. You know, if you have the entire story of Anbiya, if you, the story of Yunus alayhi salam, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, if you change the chronology, the message doesn't change. Okay? The entire discipline of history is based on this stupid idea of chronology. I mean, the mainstream. So from there, if you have an idea of modernity, which is based on chronological division of past, present, and future, but Muslim idea or the Quranic idea of time, okay, is very different. So so both modernity and religion, these are oppressive category. And let me conclude by saying that if we really want to have intellectual freedom, we should not be allowing ourselves to be defined by the prevalent terms. So I do not accept the legitimacy. I mean, I live in a state, I accept their categories, but for me, morally, there is nothing called immigrant. There is nothing called refugee. Allah created people as insan. It is the power which transforms these people into immigrants, legal, illegal, and so on and so forth. Okay? So the point is, what Bourdieu calls doxa. Doxa is a set of terms with which you think, but about which you do not think. So for example, the different states give you this term, oh, a group of people is refugee, immigrant, illegal, deviant. And you, rather than question them, you use those very categories supplied by the power that be, and then you want to think about liberation or justice. That is not the way to think about emancipatory politics. Modernity, religion, secularism, these are, modernity is an oppressive term. Religion is not part of the experience of, even Hindus didn't describe themselves as what they think as faith, as religion. So these are some of the things that I wanted to put forward to you to think about in terms of religion and secularity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Irfan Ahmed, for sharing your thoughts on